makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Nagelia de Ravin. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Charryse Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a veteran psychotherapist in the field of integrative wellness, neuroscience, and mental health, and is the founder of Jade Integrative Counseling and Wellness. With her extensive education and experience as a clinician, executive wellness consultant, and keynote speaker, Dr. Johnson is a well-rounded expert in the field of mental health. Join us as we dive into Dr. Johnson's journey as a female founder and learn about the unique combination of education and experiences that have made her one of a kind in the industry. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the incredible story of Dr. Charryse Johnson on the Female Founders Podcast. Good morning, Dr. Johnson. You are a mental health consultant and owner of Jade Integrative Counseling. I hope I'm saying that right, though, in wellness. I'm looking forward to learn more about how you are helping individuals navigate challenging life transition and identify development. So, my first question is, you have a background in professional counseling focusing on crisis and trauma, right? So how did your interest develop in this area?
Yeah, so it's funny because crisis and trauma was not something that I initially saw myself doing. And then as I went into my doctoral program and needed to choose a concentration, that was one that really stood out to me. And I'll never forget being in the midst of some of those classes and that schoolwork and thinking, oh, this is great material, but I'm not sure when I'm going to use it. And then we had the pandemic, we had the political unrest that was occurring and continues to occur. And it really just opened up my understanding of the need for people to understand what crisis is, what trauma looks like, and how it's something that can happen to any of us, and really went from there. And I also realized I had already been doing it all along.
Isn't that funny?
It is. I was like, oh, okay, I just now have language, for what I was already doing, because I'm also a clinical therapist. So, I've been working with people one-on-one in that way and advocating and working with schools and organizations in the community, but didn't quite put it together the way I have now.
Wow. I love it. It's like the thing that we do every day in our lives, we just doesn't realize it until like the wake-up call come. And I think that for you, the pandemic was the wake-up call. Hey, people can use your help here. You're already doing it. So might as well go out there and do it for more people.
Yeah. And I will also say, I feel like the pandemic helped open up the opportunities in the sense of people who may have thought we don't need that. That's not for us. We're professionals. We're a business. As long as we look well on the outside, everything's okay. When that level of unrest hit, everyone had to acknowledge, okay, we can't do business as usual. We really have to make sure that we care for our people in a way that maybe wasn't as necessary. I think it's always been important, but in a way that wasn't as necessary 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Exactly. And I think that it's just the perfect timing as well, because a lot more people need your help, like you said, and also they need that guidance, because believe it or not everyone knows how to deal with things like that. They don't know until someone help them out. And sometimes too, I think one of the issues, they afraid of asking for help. They are just afraid of it, and I don't know why.
I think it's scary to ask for help because that also means you have to acknowledge that something's not okay. There can be a level of minimizing. So if someone has been through different things in their life before and they feel like, well, I've always been able to work through it by myself, I also think there can be a level of guilt or shame that isn't ideal, but just very real to what's wrong with me. Why can't I figure this out? Why aren't things getting better? And it just takes kind of putting your pride down and saying, I've gotten myself as far as I can by myself. Now I really need some support. And that doesn't mean that something's wrong with me. It's actually, it takes a lot of courage to reach out.
But how do you deal with people like that when you get actually, let's say that, for example, they realize that, okay, I really need the help, but they get to you, but they don't want to open up.
Yeah. A lot of patience. I let people know right from the beginning, this is a partnership. It's not a hierarchy. So it's not about me looking down and pathologizing someone or an organization and telling them all the things that's wrong. But I really want you to see me more as I am partnering with you. We're going at your pace. I will also tell them if we hit a topic or an area and you feel like I am not ready for that, tell me, and we will completely respect that and move on, because it is important to let people do it at their own pace and not feel like it's too much too fast.
Exactly. I agree with you on that. So, was entrepreneurship always the next thing? I mean, like the next step forward for you? How did that happen?
So, entrepreneurship came out of a need to reach people in ways that were outside of the boxes that I was already operating in, right? So, if you're working for an organization, it's a great experience, but you're also bound to the parameters that an organization feels is safe. And I knew that I had ideas on how to reach people in a level that wasn't looking the same way as I had already seen. And I wanted the space to be able to meet people where they are. And I knew that the best way to do that was to do it on my own. Was I terrified? Absolutely. It was, oh my goodness. I was like, okay, can I do this? It's a daunting process to step out there, because you also lose the covering of that organization that you had before. And well, if this crashes and burns, this is on me, right? So I remember going in and going, okay, Lord, just help me not to have my family starve. Help me do this and everyone make it. But it has been an incredible journey that has been so much more fulfilling than I ever would have imagined. So if someone is listening and they're on the fence and they wonder, can I do it? The answer is absolutely. Absolutely.
But I'm curious to know, how did you
Mhm.
get over all of that? You know, am I able to do this? Can I do this? Is my children going to starve tomorrow morning? Am I going to
Yes.
get kicked out of the house? What?
Yeah.
How did you overcome all this fear? Because it's a fear that a lot of people are not able to overcome.
Yeah. So I actually turned the fear into fuel, right? I started
Mm.
figuring out, okay, if I am that determined, what do I need in order to take care of the needs of my family? So I first figured out, this is what I'm making here. What does that translate to as an entrepreneur? And what does that step look like? What do I need in order to be working my way there? So, for example, I'm more introverted than people actually realize. They see me one on one or speaking or teaching, which is very different than being in a crowd. So, I was terrified of marketing and selling myself. That is something that was very uncomfortable for me. So I had to figure out, well, how can I translate my passion for helping people into a way that still felt authentic to me and comfortable, where I felt like I was sharing instead of just trying to
Mm-hmm.
sell something. So I think it's a matter of figuring out what you need, doing a lot of research and learning and recognizing I don't have to have all of the answers, but what are the answers that I need and where can I go find them? I think it's very important to be connected to other entrepreneurs. So there were also two other women who happened to be starting off in their same entrepreneurial journey, and we stuck together every step of the way and would encourage each other or help each other. Hey, I just found out this information. Here's something that you might want to check out. So be teachable, do the research, and turn it into fuel by letting it push you to go, I can make this work. And how do I do it in a way that still feels like you are yourself? Because I believe it's important not to mimic, or feel like you need to be anyone else. Like there's space for you just the way you do it.
I love it. And I love the part that you said you have the other two women to like a support. It's like having this type of people, like when you feel like you're about to crash down, you can just pick up the phone and call and then talk to these
Yeah.
people and you get back up again. So I
Yeah.
love that part because I think we need it a lot.
Hmm. And it's important. I mean, we stayed connected daily in some of those early months. Like each day kind of had a focus. I would share with them my goals,
Hmm.
and not just my goals as an entrepreneur, but even my goals in terms of how do I stay balanced. So when I noticed I'm working a lot, but I'm not taking a break, then I reached out to them and said, I need to do better about taking a break. I am marking that time off of my calendar. And if you do not hear that I am taking a break and eating lunch, come after me. Right. So I think that part
I
is
like it.
also important, the self care.
Yes. Self-care, yes. And as women, that's something a lot of time we just put it behind us. I don't know why. I think all of us just do it without thinking. It's like something we
Hmm.
do naturally. We just wake up every day from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep. We just do. But all this do doesn't include us. It just includes everything else on earth except for
Hmm.
ourselves. I don't know
Yes, which
why.
is a
It
problem.
just, yes,
Yeah.
it is a problem.
I think we're
It is a problem.
nurturers by nature. And so it's just in our desire and our heart to want to make things better for other people. And then depending upon how you grew up as well, there are a lot of times where that was also the model that we saw in our mothers or grandmothers. So then we believe that a good woman or good entrepreneur is constantly busy, is always on the go, but that is a recipe for burnout. So centering yourself and taking care of yourself is actually going to make you more effective in the long run.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, it
Mhm.
yes, it will be. So now you started Jade and Integrative Counseling in Wellness. Am I saying that the proper way?
You are, yes.
Okay, so you started that to guide individuals through challenging life transition and past hurts. Can you tell us
Mhm.
more about the company and the services it offers?
Yes, so we are a therapy practice, but what I call an integrative therapy practice. One of the things that I've seen over time is we as humans often symptom manage. So we're anxious and we want to know, well, how can I stop being anxious? But then we don't look at what are other areas of my life that add to that anxiety. So we focus on mental health, but looking at you as a whole person. So knowing financially, socially, spiritually, as an individual, mentally, even physically, do you have things going on, an autoimmune condition? Are you eating enough? Because not eating enough could make you anxious. So we could spend all the time in the world. Are you sleeping enough? Because if you're not sleeping, you're going to be anxious, right? All of those integrated pieces. So we work with ages 13 and up, centered around general mental health, but we also have specialties in trauma, in crisis, in eating disorders, in helping people recover from relationship or family dynamics. And the concept of identity development isn't something that people always understand at first. So identity development is essentially the difference between here's who I am based on who I've had to be. This was
Mm.
your role in the family. This was the expectations of your culture. Here's what society has told you. But there are times that we realize, but that's in conflict with who I actually am. And as a result of trying to live up to this identity, my internal identity feels off or incongruent. That's often when we feel like we're an imposter. Is there's a difference between what's happening inside and outside. So we work with individuals and go, well, what does it look like to try to reconcile the differences? Where can you show up as yourself? What makes you afraid? What do you think would happen if people knew more about who you really are versus you walking around and being what you think they want you to be because you want to belong or be accepted?
Wow. So do you actually meet people sometimes that change themselves because of someone else, but that's not actually who they actually is. They are completely the opposite of who that person think they are. It's just because they want to belong in that type of environment.
All the time. And it doesn't happen intentionally. It is, you want to make your parents happy. And your parents have a very different view of what they want for you. Like perhaps they wanted you to be a teacher or a doctor or go into the family business when you actually are more of a creative and wanted to open up your own art studio or something different. So there will be a lot of times where people go, I feel bad because I have a good life, but this isn't the life that I wanted. This isn't the pace that I wanted. And so they're exhausted and emotionally overwhelmed by trying to live up to it. So it happens frequently. And then that midlife age
Crisis.
range, yes, that crisis of identity where a person is looking back and realizing, okay, I thought I had all the time in the world, and where I am is very different than where I thought I would be at this time. And so, how can they still have hope and support their future without feeling regret or feeling like a failure if it doesn't look the way they wanted it to?
Do you find it to be more like in the mid-30s or a little bit later one, like in the 60s?
So, what's happening now is it's happening in the early 20s, believe it or not.
20s? Wow.
Yes. I believe with the increase of social media, we have a younger generation of individuals who believe between 20 and 25 that they should have the same lifestyle of somebody who is 40 or 45. You know, they're watching their
Whoa.
counterparts on social media travel the world and have their own business. And this 23-year-old person just started a $7 million company by chance. So they have this huge level of expectation, or the quintessential, you're supposed to go to school, go to college, and by the time you're 25, you're supposed to be married and have 2 kids and a dog. So if you're not engaged by 23, you're behind. So it's actually happening earlier for that age range. And then from there, the 30s tend to be, and I use that loosely, pretty stable, because I think that's the beginning of when you realize, okay, I need to go to bed and I can't stay up as late as I used to. I'm done with that life. I'm ready for a little bit more calm. But typically, I think the identity crisis happens more in the 40s, in the early to mid 40s, when you're thinking about, if I stay on this trajectory, what will my 50s be like? What will my 60s be like? Will I still be working, or will I actually be able to enjoy some time and resources? Will I have any?
Wow. That's interesting, actually. I was thinking like mid-30s, that's when you kind of like the wake-up call kick in because like,
Yeah.
oops, yeah, I just turned 35, huh?
Mhm.
I gotta do something more with my life. But it's great that the change is happening early now because we
Mhm.
need that. If more
Yeah.
women or more people can realize that, okay, especially for men, because sometimes they get behind a lot more than a
Mhm.
woman. So if they
Mhm.
can realize it by the 20s, even early 30s is a big thing for women because now they go
Absolutely.
up faster.
Mhm. Very, very true. Very true. And I
So
think men have a harder time as well, just
yes,
recognizing it.
yes. So now for your services, is it only available within the United States or even just in one state, or is it
Mhm.
online? How does it work exactly?
Yeah. So I have various ways that I'm able to connect with people. For the counseling practice, every state in the US, you're only licensed for your state. So that's in North Carolina. There is a counseling compact that will be passed next year that'll open that up to 16 or 17 states. So that's going to be great. That's why coaching and consulting became an open door, because as I travel and keynote, I come across so many different women and organizations that are outside of North Carolina that want support that may not be counseling, right? They're looking for strategic wellness and how to implement that into their lives. So if it's a coaching and consulting individual or organization, that can be done all across the world, which I've
Okay.
really enjoyed being able to do. And that can either be one on one, sometimes small groups of individuals will get together and do something together, or with an organization. Uh, I also have, which just launched within the last 2 months, an online resource hub where I've always had a heart to really help bridge access, meaning there are a lot of people who are in need but may not be able to afford one-on-one counseling, may not be able to afford consulting. So they can go online, and I have different courses or videos that are on topics such as self-sabotage or emotional eating or autoimmune disorders, and they can order that, watch it wherever they are at their convenience, and then they have lifetime access to a high quality resource that they can watch in the privacy of their own home or on their phone.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. But for the counseling itself, he needs to be in your state only.
Correct. Yes.
Is it in person? Is it both online and in person?
So I do a hybrid. Prior to the pandemic, it was all in person because insurance companies actually did not allow in the state of North Carolina for you to do virtual. That shifted, and now I'd say about 70% of my individuals are still online because it's more convenient. They save time by not having to drive and park and take the time off of work. And then about 30% come in person. So it's a hybrid.
I don't know how you find time, but you are doing a lot.
I don't know. Everyone always asks that. They were like, "How are you getting all of this time out of the day?" I'm like, I don't know. I love it though. I love the variety. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I think you have a magic tree in your backyard. I need to go get some of you.
Yes, I'll send you some of the magic as soon as we're done.
So emotional well-being is one of the focus areas of your counseling. How important do you think it is personally and professionally for an individual to have a well-rounded life?
Oh, it is extremely important to live well, to love well, and to play well, right? Just in a very simple way. If our identity is solely focused on productivity and what we do as entrepreneurs, then we run the risk of, when those ups and downs come, which they do in the entrepreneurial world, then our emotions will constantly shift with it. I like to give the analogy of, think of emotional well being as a static line, and then life and all the things that happen as a curve that goes up and down. And our goal is to maintain a level of emotional well being that stays as consistent as possible all the way through. So if you have a difficult day at work, or you're feeling frustrated trying to figure something out, it helps you to have something to look forward to know, but hey, I'm going to go hang out with some girlfriends in a couple of days, and that's going to take my mind off of that situation and lift my spirit. So having an identity that is in different ways, different hobbies, and not just constantly working is a key aspect of your emotional well-being, because my goal and my heart is to also help people know we really can't separate our personal well-being from our emotional well-being, because it goes with us wherever we are. Whatever's happening at home is going to impact the way you interact in your business. And whatever's happening in your business is going to impact whatever's happening in your home.
You are absolutely right with that.
We'd like to separate them, but it just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. Like, if you leave home sad, you're going to get to work sad. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And if you leave home frustrated and someone says something to you, in your professional world, you're going to take that in very different than you would if you left and it was a great morning. And so a lot of times we don't even realize that there could be roadblocks that we have to our entrepreneurial growth that don't have anything to do with, we don't have the skills or the tools, but we have a place of emotional well-being that may not be as healthy as it could be. So then we don't have the confidence that we need, or we're putting too much pressure on ourselves because we feel like, this is all I have. It has to be the best.
But now, do you think that entrepreneurs should actually have a counselor or someone that can actually help them, guide them through things like that? Or do you think that just coaching should be able to do it?
It would really depend on the entrepreneur, right? If they have a good level of health and well-being themselves, then coaching may be ideal for them to have. But one of the things that I find is a lot of entrepreneurs don't consider investing in coaching for their personal role. They typically do it based on, I want to learn how to market, or I want to learn how to make six figures. And then the moment that they feel like they have that process, they stop. So I do believe whether it's a counselor or a coach or a mentor, we all benefit from having consistent check-ins with someone who can say, how are you doing as a person? How is that showing up, with your work? Does this still feel like it's in alignment? Because having that outside person, they're more objective. They're going to see things that we may not see or we may not be willing to see. So if you have that trusted relationship, you're more likely to be able to receive that from them.
Yes, I agree with you on that. That's a great way of looking at it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So now many corporates are now investing in wellness, which is very surprising. They should have been doing it years ago, especially after the pandemic.
That part.
Do you think it helps in achieving work-life balance, which is so important now?
What, with corporations doing more wellness? It does. Because the average human spends about 50 hours per week at their job. So to have that be a place that doesn't promote wellness and may not even permit wellness means that they're kind of fighting against the grain all day, and then they have maybe a car drive home in order to figure that out unless they already work from home. So to give people the opportunity to say, this is a place and an organization where they're interested in my well-being, there's tools that I can access while I'm here, will make people and has increased the likelihood that individuals feel like they can share, that they can be honest. A lot of the recent data has shown when we took kind of statistics from all different demographics and age groups, that 77% of individuals, that the top thing that they want more of in their work environment is a focus on mental health and well-being, to manage the changes, to manage the stressors, but also just to give them tools to manage life.
And especially after they've been working at home and now they have to go back in person, which is like, how do you just finally get yourself, because I know working from home takes a while to actually be able to manage it, especially if you have kids. And you finally find that space where you can balance it. They're like, oh yeah, forget about it. Come back to the office. Well, now I got to figure out how to balance it at the office now.
Yeah, so, which is a huge adjustment.
Yes, it is. It is. So I wish like more corporation, big organization can just like make it a lot easier for them. At least like for me, I felt like making them come in 2 times a week or even 3 times a week, just like a beginning, just to kind of get the flow going again instead of just 100% back at the office.
Yeah, that's the second thing that everyone wanted. The top thing was mental health, and the second thing was a hybrid work opportunity, because I do believe a lot of people realized, even though it was an adjustment when kids came home and when people came home, that having the flexibility was emotionally better for them, because that's 2 or 3 days you don't get stuck in traffic. That's 2 or 3 days you're not worried about, getting from one side of town to the other and then constantly in the car. So all of that takes the stress level down. And a lot of businesses have listened and are recognizing we don't have to micromanage our people, and they can get things done from home.
Yes.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, though. So now, overall, wellness demands a unique balance between mind, body, and spirit. So how do you help clients reach that stage?
Yeah. So it's a process of having them first kind of go, if they look at mind, body, and spirit, if their spirituality is something they ascribe to, which one of those areas feels like the greatest source of strength? Because I think it's important for people to operate from what they do well and then feel like they can build on it versus this is completely overwhelming. And then we do some vision casting. We might look down and go, okay, what would optimal wellness look like for you mentally? What would you be doing that you're not doing now? What would you be wearing that you're not wearing now? What would you not be doing? So, what would you be doing more and what would you be doing less? And they'll look at that mentally and then they'll look at that physically. And then from there, we kind of decide where do you feel like is a good place to begin and begin right on the line between it's going to take you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's not going to overwhelm you because a lot of times people also want to start at the most difficult place for themselves. And I'm like, I realize that that's the one that you want the most, but that's hard. So I will usually say, let's start in whatever area will require the least amount of effort, but give you the most impact. Because if you're overwhelmed, you're going to feel like, I want to do this, but I don't know how much energy I really have. But if you can start small and then feel like big rewards from it, then you're more likely to go, okay, that felt great. I want to keep going. And then we kind of put a plan in place and very gradually work on things and we try to stack it so that it doesn't feel like, okay, I've got to now do things completely different. We look at what's your daily routine and how do we bring in what you're wanting to achieve and where you're wanting to grow in a way that we stack your habits so it just feels layered and organic versus like you've got this huge checklist that you now got to figure out in order to be successful.
I like it. Eventually, it's become natural, something you just do naturally.
Yes, very much so.
Wow. So, identity development is also an aspect that you help individuals with. Can you tell us more about what it is and how does it help in overall progress in life?
Yeah, identity development is something that progresses from the moment we're born to the moment that we're no longer here on this earth. We are constantly taking in what do I believe about my identity? How is that in a place of peace or how is that in conflict? How do I want to show up with the world? So, kind of similar to the process that I was just talking about before, identity development is an opportunity for a person to go, here is how I view the layers of my identity. And I always find it very interesting because I'll first say to someone, write down everything that has to do with your identity. And what I find is that a lot of people will write down what they do for other people,
Ooh.
not who they are. So they'll go, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I serve on this board. And I go, well, those are all great roles, but your identity is just focused on who you are if you weren't doing any of those things. And a lot of people are like, oh, wait, I don't know because they
Wow.
don't because they spend their time going, I just go through my day based on what I know everybody else expects of me, right? So I say if we put all of those things on pause, who are you?
That's a hard
And
question.
it's a hard question for people to answer. And most of them can't. So then I go, no problem, I expected that. But now let's look at who do you want to be? Or who did you used to be that you feel like somewhere along the way you lost? And they might go, yeah, I used to be creative. I used to be more playful, but now I'm very serious and everything has to be rigid on a schedule. And I miss part of myself that is more carefree. So the process starts with how well do they know who they are? Can they create a vision for what they want to be? Because not everybody can. For some people, that's very scary to think about being anything other than what other people would expect. And then if they can't, we'll go back to who were you as a child? What do you remember about yourself? Because that's a big part of our core nature that doesn't necessarily disappear. We just decide whether or not it's still acceptable. And then it's a process of going, so how can we bring some of that into your life? In what small ways? Where do you have room? Where do you need to make room? And it's a process there until they feel like, oh, this feels really great. I was by myself and I wasn't afraid to be by myself. Actually, they knew how to spend the time and they allowed themselves to sit down and read a book for enjoyment, not a book that was teaching them a new skill, you know, or their job. But a lot of times we lose our identity because we hide it based on what we think is acceptable, or we spend so much time trying to build the identity of our business, our brand, our children, our relationships, that we just aren't nurturing ourselves.
Again. I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
love it. It's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Mhm.
Like, I've done all of these things in my life, but who am I?
Mhm.
If today is my last day on earth, what would I enjoy doing being me?
Yeah. And what would people remember about you? Because believe it or not, they're not going to recite your list of achievements. They genuinely
True.
aren't going to remember those things. Like you think about, you know, think of someone that you just love and admire or care for. And when you think about what you love about them, it's probably your interactions, your memories, how they treat you. You can't list 5 things that they've achieved because that's really not what makes them important, you know, in your life. And I think that's especially important for women as entrepreneurs to maintain that balance, even in the sense of if you are a parent and an entrepreneur, there can be a tug of war between being a working mom and then what that looks like in parenting. And so there can be some navigation that has to occur, and you've got to give yourself permission to know it's okay to want to be an entrepreneur. And that doesn't make you or mean that you love your family less because you're not home with them all the time. But if a female entrepreneur feels guilty or how much time they need to spend at work, then they may not parent well because they're trying to overcompensate versus going, nope, this is a balance. I still have great kids and we can still have a great relationship. So just being able to put all of those things on your plate and let that be a part of your identity, but not have them be at odds with one another.
I love it. I don't know how you come up with that program, but that's one of the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's one of my favorites. It really is.
I can understand why, because it is mine too. So now let's talk about your book, Expired Mindset. It helps people shift into a higher place of peace and potential. Can you tell us about the idea of the book? How did the idea of the book come to you in the first place?
Yeah. So the funny story is my daughter in October of 2020, in the pandemic, said, I think you should write a book. And I said, I think you should go away because I have enough to do, but then it kind of stuck with me. And I was like, hmm, it just kind of stuck with me. And then I was interacting with, clients and businesses and organizations and listening to what I like to call the cracks in their armor appear, right? We often use busyness as a way to present as wellness. Well, if I look great and I'm constantly busy, I don't have to think about the things that aren't really good in my life. Well, all of a sudden, the world slowed down and everybody was sitting with all of the areas of their life, whether it was a relationship or their personal lives, they thought they had let go or stuffed down, and now they couldn't stay busy and avoid it. So everything was coming to the surface. So I use this analogy based on the iceberg theory in the book, which means we all have a symbolic iceberg. And above the water is what we allow the world to see. We want to present a certain way. This is how we want to be seen. However, underneath the surface is a much wider iceberg And that's where we have all of these different hidden stories, unresolved areas of pain, mindsets, and beliefs. We may present well and people think, oh, you're so positive and happy all the time. But underneath the surface, we may feel like, I don't think I'm good enough. People are going to see me and I feel like a fraud. And so the concept of expired mindsets was getting to a place where you realize the potential that you're looking for is being held underwater because it's time to release some of those aspects of your life, to go back and to face them and to clean them out and to work through them so that you are now showing up in your iceberg above the surface feels congruent. And that's how it birthed.
Well, thank you to your daughter. Because
Yeah,
she
I know.
opens a lot of doors.
She always teases me. She's like, see, you should listen to your children.
I'm with her on that. She'll listen to your children.
Yes, yes.
So now, any advice for women who want to get into business?
I would say figure out your why. And I will often talk to people about having a push why and a pull why. So a push why is the one that I want to have a business because this is wonderful and I have a great idea. That's going to push you through the door and get you started. But there's going to be some bumps along the road and hard times are going to come. So your pull why is the one that's going to pull you through when you want to stop. It's the one that's going to pull you through when you're overwhelmed and you're doubting yourself. It's the one that's going to pull you through when your hand is cramping from the grant that you're trying to complete in order, to get the finances for this business. So know what you want and why, but then also ask, why is this important to you? What impact are you looking to make on the world? And then from there, learn. Take every opportunity that you can to learn from other entrepreneurs that you trust that have actually shown that they have done well and devise a plan. I think a lot of women who want to start in business jump into business too quickly. They get very excited and then jump in, and then it's a lot more difficult to kind of go back and go, oh, I didn't set all of this up. So know your why, your push and your pull. Be willing to learn from others and then make sure that you create a really good foundation. If you're not good at the financial aspect, who's going to support you and help you and what resources, do you need in place in order to start, and making sure that you're building from there so that it's solid and sustainable.
Thank you. That's a great advice. Pull out. Never think of it.
Yeah.
I never think of it. I love it. It's different. And that's something we all actually go through. There's time where it's just like, forget about this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. What helps you when you have those moments?
My purpose.
Yes.
I have to remind myself my purpose. Why am I doing this in the first place? And the moment I remember that, but also I have a son that always look at me, Mom, you're not in your office working. That's a big reminder. I can't forget that.
But our kids are a big reminder too, because they are watching, right? They're watching us work through things, and it's good to be honest with them. But yes, your purpose is your pull why, but I've seen people start a business and not have a purpose, and that won't do as well as starting a business and knowing that you have a purpose. And the other thing that I would say is, even if someone else already has the kind of business that you want, there's room for you. There are thousands, tens of thousands of counselors and consultants in the world. But I also trust that there are certain people and certain organizations that are going to connect with me and the way I give and share. So try not to let that doubt of, but other people are already doing it, stop you, because they're not doing it your way. They're not doing it with your story. There's something unique to you that's going to create its own sphere of influence. So if that is your excuse, get rid of it.
And if also one thing you can do, just get inside your car, drive down the street, and you're gonna find a Burger King on the other side, a McDonald's on the other side. If you keep going a little bit farther, you're gonna find a Walgreens on one side, you're gonna find a CVS on the other side.
Yes.
So guess what? They are competing with one another, but they're right next to one another.
Correct.
So that's means there's enough for each one of them. That's the one is still there.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for taking the time to allow me to share what you do with our audience and the people who's going to read this or listen to this or watch it. It's I love what you are doing. It's different. And then sometimes we just need different to get us keep moving in this world. And and all the things that you are providing is the things that sometimes we just don't want to put them out there. We want to hide them. We want to die hiding them. And it's not the best way to go. It's the best way is to actually go through them and understand them and let them be, so that we can move on and create something better in this world. So I thank you for giving me your time and for helping other women, because we need more of that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy, and thank you for this platform. You have created something unique, and I hope that more and more women honestly will just continue to see the value in what you're giving, because we are definitely better together.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.